Welcome to another episode of Michigan Tech's Husky Hour. In this episode of Husky Hour, Dayna and a panel of students talk about the best ways to study. Learn about some effective studying methods, different ways to take notes, and resources that are available on campus to help you succeed. Enjoy!
And we'll just have a pretty casual discussion about best study habits.
My first question is, where is your favorite place to study? Personally, my favorite place to study is on campus. It's super basic. I love the first floor of the library. If I'm getting super serious into studying and have a really important test coming up, I'll go to the second floor of the library just because it's a little quieter and easier to focus. But I like studying with the social aspect of accidentally running into other people that you know while they're studying. It's nice to have those little short 3-minute breaks of conversation with other people.
So I would say my favorite spot to study, also pretty basic. I like the second floor of the library. Last year, like everyone I knew and their brother would study there. So it's just like a nice positive atmosphere to study in. I like places with a lot of natural light. So I try and go to the Dow building and anywhere that I can get like a nice view because then it makes it more serene.
Yeah, I think that touches on just an important piece of the study puzzle is that place is so important. You know, a lot of research about studying and about learning is having good spots to do that. And I know we're somewhat limited now with COVID. So it could be even just creating a good spot in your room. There's a lot of research about being in different spots to do different types of activities. So, for example, laying in your bed studying might make you more tired while you're studying and less likely to fall asleep because your mind is used to being awake. So, you know, I always used to be tempted to study in front of like the TV on our couch, but I know that wasn't my best studying because my brain is trained to zone into TV if I'm sitting on my couch. So I think place is an important thing to consider. And I know that goes kind of into Bailey's next question, which is what's your best advice for first years? So you kind of make that transition from home where you had to study at home usually, or in your bedroom, to college where you have different opportunities. But what are some other good tips for first year students?
Well, my mom told me this advice, and I thought that she was crazy when she first told me. She said that you should always try and be a chapter or half a chapter ahead in your book, like from where this lecture actually is. And I was like, oh no, I'll just keep up with the lectures. That'll be fine. Read ahead. Reading ahead saves you so much time and hassle. And it's so nice kind of already having an idea of what's going on in the lecture when you get to the lecture. Definitely try and read a little bit ahead.
I think my best advice, especially for the current climate of everything going on, is give yourself time to adjust. I feel like a lot of students, they come in and like, they've been told, like, you're going to have to study. It's going to be like a full-time job. And that's really exhausting to get yourself to adapt to. So making sure you're cutting yourself some slack and maybe easing your time like in a percentage way, like up to where you can study that much, but not doing it like right from the get-go, because then you're going to get fatigued and not really be able to keep up with it.
And I guess to contribute, I guess my experience with study habits, kind of piggybacking off what was said earlier of read ahead, it's going to make you, it's going to give you an extra exposure to the material, so it's going to stick better just from repetition. It'll allow you to participate in class discussion better, which then kind of helps reinforce everything. Speaking, I guess, from my personal experience, I have ADHD, which makes structuring long, abstract tasks very difficult. One of the things that's generally not commonly understood about ADHD is that it's not just, oh, you're really hyper, or you can't sit still. It's more, it's an executive function disorder, which breaks down into several things like time blindness. So organizing long scale timelines for projects becomes difficult because you don't know how long things take. It's hard for you to kind of grasp that sometimes. It can manifest in a few other ways, but my general advice from there is setting aside time to try and plan out what you need to do, making lists, finding ways to graphically represent or like physically represent what you need to accomplish helps, and kind of keeping track of that to-do list helps. And it also allows you to visually track what you've gotten done. So when you're having a rough day or a rough week and you're feeling kind of worn down, you can look back at that list and see what you've actually gotten done. It's really easy to get bogged down in all of the tasks that you didn't quite get done right, or all the things you still need to do, everything that needs to get done, and to lose track of the victories that you've built up. And that's a skill that isn't just limited to your time in school. Keeping track of your victories is something that you're going to need to do in the workplace, because there's always going to be another fire to put out. There's always going to be something else. So there's a little bit of self-care in this, of keeping track of what you've accomplished helps keep that motivation up.
What are some tips on note taking? Personally, for me, the best thing about this whole semester has been the online lectures, because you can slow them down. So I can watch the lecture and then I can go back and watch it in like half speed and actually be able to keep up with the notes and not try and read scribblish next time I look at the notes. So I think that's a really good idea, is to go back and watch the lecture again and try and take notes, maybe watching it a little slower so you can catch more things. And then that also gives you a chance to actually fully pay attention to the lecture the first time. I know that when I try and take notes and listen to a lecture, I lose like half of what he said, trying to make sure that I was writing down the right words or the right sentences. So
add on to that, I think what's best for anybody with any learning disability is often what's best for any learner. It's universal design. Wheelchair ramps are easy for anybody to walk up with, but they're best for somebody in a wheelchair. So the same kind of applies to learning, that, doing things like chunking a lecture, like if it's pre-recorded and you can watch it 10 or 15 minutes at a time, that's about all the attention span I have right now, no matter what my learning ability is, and 10 minutes might be pushing it. So if you have other things going on, then really, what are some of those best things you can do? Shorten things out, watch them slower, read a transcript of it, take different kinds of notes. I think those are all really great tips.
One of the most important things that I found out is going back through, if your professor gives you slides, and writing down on the slides and trying to add like your own thought process to them. That's going to help you a lot more, because if you use different words and you don't go verbatim off what they're saying, it's going to process it in a way that your body and like your mind understands better. So then it's going to be able to stick with you. Like if you're a very independent learner, or like talking through things with other people and like not just going off what your professor's saying, will help a lot.
Pre-recorded lectures, definitely kind of breaking it into, if they don't already break them into like 10 or 15 minute chunks, kind of dividing them up that way helps kind of maintain your focus. If you can go do 15, 20, 30 minutes of lecture, take 5 or 10 minutes to get up, walk around, grab a snack, stretch, do something just to kind of help reset your willpower a little bit, and focus, and then get back into it. And maybe set a timer to make sure that you keep on track with it. Personally, from like a note-taking perspective, I found multicolored notes really helped me when I went back to look through it. It took a bit of time to get used to keeping track, like being able to switch colors quick enough. Definitely having a couple of different colors to break up the monotony of the notes. And maybe you assign certain colors to different things, where just like the general notes are in blue, and then diagrams start in green, and then it labels on the diagrams are in magenta or whatever, so that you know what everything needs to be.
Do you have a best music genre to study with? Or like personally, do you even study with music, or do you keep it silent? Everyone has their own preferences. I would suggest trying out different things. I found that classical music works really well for me, because no matter what the song, I'm going to try and sing along, and then I get distracted. So if there's no words, then I can just listen to the melody and keep going.
So I study with music pretty much all the time, unless it's like super intensive. And I think the biggest thing for me is like nothing super heavy. Like you want like something calm. So like for me, I listen to like either soft pop hits or I'll listen to like alternative because music's like a soother for me. So it's as long as like it's in the background, it's not going to bother me too much. So I try and listen to stuff that I don't know super well.
Well, mine kind of goes all over the place. I think from what I've figured out, it kind of comes down to how many times have I listened to all of the songs in the playlists. Because if I know them very well, my brain will kind of start to zone out and it will just be background noise and it won't be super distracting. But if it's a song that I don't know, I'm going to try and listen to it. So then I'll end up kind of listening to anything ranging from show tunes to ska when I'm working on stuff. But if I'm trying to read and comprehend something, it's got to be like movie soundtracks or scores that don't have any words. And if they do have words, it's not a language that I'm familiar with.
So about how many hours would you recommend trying to put aside for studying each week? I know that like when I first got to tech, they said for a 3 credit class, you should expect to put 3 hours out like a week studying. So if you have 18 credits, you should be spending 18 hours worth outside of class studying. I thought that was a bit extreme personally, but I do find myself at least 5 to 10 hours a week just sitting down and studying. So what is your recommendations on that?
I had heard you should do 2 hours per credit hour. So a little even more extreme actually. So I mean, if I'm being honest, I spend about anywhere from 25 to 40 hours a week studying. But that's on like a really heavy week. So like I would say probably around 30 hours, but I guess that also depends on the pace you work at. And for me, I definitely work a little slower. So it depends on your pace and really if you feel like you are comfortable with the material. I say working until you like feel comfortable is a lot better than hours. It's quality over quantity, I'd say.
I think you touched on a good thing. I think a lot of students that I talk to have, and I did this too, like the quality of studying was pretty low and frequented with like YouTube videos of puppies falling asleep or just, talking to my friends. And so I felt like I was studying for a long, long time and it was really draining, but I wasn't always getting good quality. And so I think that's just so important to be purposeful with your time. And this kind of goes back into that time management piece of, can you break things down into small chunks? Like, can you preview material for 15 minutes before class? Can you, attend your class and take notes? Can you review your class and summarize, top 5 main points from your class right after class or sometime later that day? And then when you're studying, one of the things that I've found most helpful, this is my biggest tip, is that what you did in high school as activities, that's what studying is. So all of the things that your teachers had you do were the ways that you learned. And most of our professors don't always have activities like that. It's more lecture style. You have to get the material, but then there aren't the activities created. And so actually creating some of those activities for yourself will do the learning for you. And a lot of the time when I say that to students, they're like, what? Like, oh, whoa, that's totally different. Or they'll try it and like make a PowerPoint of the material that you were supposed to learn and pretend like you're going to teach it to class. And you don't have to ever teach it to anybody. But if you think about it like you're going to teach it to somebody, the chances are that you'll really learn it very well. And I think I've noticed that most just coming to a professional job is that when I create something, I know it really well. And I've learned it well enough that I can teach it to other people. And that's where I know, like, I've got this material.
Personally, I like flashcards. I think flashcards are a great way, especially with like, I'm in anatomy right now and physiology. So flashcards are really saving my butt in that class. There's so many definitions and just so many different things. And actually just making the flashcards, it's kind of fun. You can get creative with it. But just, writing the material down, that alone helps you learn it better as well. Is there any like tips to prepare for really hard exam that you know is coming up or a big project. I guess my best tip for preparing for an exam is give yourself the time. Like, oh, I have that exam Wednesday. I don't need to worry about it Tuesday. You should probably start worrying about it a little earlier than Tuesday. Don't try and cram everything into one night. Spread out like 30 minutes of studying for that exam each day over the next week before the exam. Don't try and cram. It doesn't work, and it just stresses you out more because you feel like you don't know anything because you're cramming.
For different types of classes, the kind of studying you need to do is going to be a little bit different, right? So my fiance was just graduated from veterinary school this last spring, and what she would do for a lot of her like pharmacology classes or her anatomy classes was that she would build a study guide. She would go through all the notes she had taken and go back through and essentially type them all back up a second time, focusing on what had gotten the most like attention during lecture and what might have been highlighted specifically by the instructor as things that they would need to know. And she would go through and kind of build this study guide, and then she would kind of collaborate with her classmates on it of like, hey, I built this study material. Does anyone want to like take a look through it and proofread it? And then that gave everyone else the opportunity to look through it, and then they could discuss it. And then it also kind of gave them a tool to quiz each other with. For a more calculations heavy course, or some of the engineering courses or the physics courses, you got to just go back through the homework and look through the problems and make sure that you understand how the math was done and the principles behind it. And sometimes knowing the exception and making sure that you know what some exceptions are is going to be important. So I would say even if your class doesn't allow you to make a little 3x5 index card to bring as like a cheat sheet, make the cheat sheet anyway, because those are the things that you're going to want to know. And by going through and writing that cheat sheet, you're going to help reinforce that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said as just a really good reinforcement of you have to assess what each class needs, and doing anything that's a creation type of activity. Those are higher order thinking skills. So if you're creating your own study guide, and it's not actually using the flashcards, that's the greatest benefits. It's actually creating those. And if you're a visual learner, can you draw a picture that relates to that concept? Or is there a chart that you can add? Or, kind of what Eric was saying with the problems, like, can you either say out loud or write down, what are the steps to solving that problem? What are the potential exceptions? Write those out. Don't just glance at it and say, I know this, and then move on. Another way you can do that is to make a regular habit of using like a blank piece of paper and testing yourself before you look at any material. So we're really good at responding to triggers like, oh, that's familiar. I know how to do it. The thing with testing, though, is that they always try to make it unfamiliar. Do you still know how to do it? And so that's where if you're continually testing yourself in that way, where you're looking at something unfamiliar or nothing at all and coming up with the answer, then you've moved that material into your solid long-term memory. That for sure.
What are some beneficial campus resources that we have available for students to study?
Student-run learning centers are a very valuable resource that are sometimes underutilized during periods of calm and then inundated with way too much traffic 2 days before an exam. The students who work there want to help you. You're going to get more out of it if you go there. If you just have like a once a week appointment, if they do that, to just go through issues you're struggling with on the homework, you're going to be better off for the exam. Not only because you're talking it out and working through the problem, but generally you learn better when discussing new material with a peer than with someone who's at a different, I guess, hierarchical level than you when it comes to authority.
Yeah, my second semester, I believe, I had a chemistry learning center appointment every week. And there were weeks I'd walk in and I'm like, I already kind of understand what's going on this week. I don't think we really need to talk about anything. And, oh, all right, well, I'll see you next week. Like, they're very nice people. They're students too. They're trying to learn, they want to help. And, like, they're very understanding of, oh, I have an exam this week. I have to cancel our appointment. They're not going to yell at you. They're not going to panic. Like, it's fine. It's good to set up that resource so you already have it going, so then you can keep up with the information and you don't get like all of a sudden you're 3 weeks behind and, oh, I don't know what's going on now. Like, that's not an ideal situation. Definitely just taking advantage of those.
Another piece that we're alluding to here, but just to say it directly, is that consistency and having time to study when you're not in anxious periods, when your brain is like fully charged, not short on sleep. And then putting that information into our long-term memory is so important because it's so much more stable if you've sat on it and had it spinning around in your brain for a month. You're going to remember it for the exam. If it's something you learned less than 2 weeks before your exam, you're much less likely to remember that. And especially if you throw in emotion, lack of sleep, anything like that, that might be going on and affecting you.
So at the Water Center, we have the Student Success Center. So what we do is not necessarily helping with one particular class, but we help you with study tactics and a wide variety of things. So you can come in, you can get coaching on test anxiety, you can get coaching on how to study for different classes, how to basically anything that might be affecting your study or something that can make you a better student and improve your time here at Tech, we can help you with. And then also with that, there's great access to other people who, like, say you needed accommodations, we can help you refer there and kind of get you on the right track in case you are having issues that you weren't even quite sure that they were there. So we do a lot of different things.
Thanks. And then just to make sure we're mentioning everything, I think lots of professors have office hours that go unattended. Making a connection with professor can always improve your grade or improve your chances of learning for things. Utilizing study groups, just turning to a friend or to somebody else in the class or sending them a private message on your Zoom chat. Hey, anybody interested in forming a study group, email me. I think a lot of students are hesitant to do that because they're afraid of being judged, but I think most students wish that somebody would invite them to a study group. So if you can go out on a limb and be the person to invite, you might just end up with a group of people who are willing to study with you or share materials or something. So utilize all of those resources, absolutely.
Husky Hour is brought to you by the Center for Student Mental Health and Well-Being. Visit mtu.edu/well-being for more information about programs, events, and workshops. Thanks for listening.